Dear ladies and gentlemen, teams and organizers, congratulations to teams participating in the final of International Economics Olympiad. And EY team, Liene, Girts, Kārlis, Anda, Eva, Sanders, and me will be the ones evaluating. So we will giving the floor to the team number 1.
Please wait a minute. Yes, hello. I would also like to start some initial announcements. So, of course, thank you all the teams for your great work, and especially thank you for all the judges. So there were 29 judges doing this group competition, and I'm very thankful for all the judges. And we have already announced the winners of the groups, and I will announce them again here in a moment. And dear attendees who are attending now, you will be invited to present the second time if your team was in the finals. So please be ready, and please mark the name of your country in front of your username so we can find you in the list of the attendees. So, and now I would like to present our finalists, which teams are the ones who won in the separate groups. If you haven't seen that yet on the broadcast. So our 7 best teams in business case presentations are Team Malaysia, Team Latvia, Team Canada, Team Lebanon, Team Switzerland, Team Brazil, and Team USA. So congratulations to the best teams in their groups. So as to the finals, so we will ask these teams to present again in the same order, and the jury will judge you the same as I did in the groupings, but only to find which group is the best of these 7 teams. Of course, congratulations to all the teams, and now we would like to start with Team Malaysia. So we would like to invite Team Malaysia, and we will promote you to a panelist just in a moment, and you will be able to start. I will start your presentation, and I will give rights to one of you. So we have two contestants from Team Malaysia. Are there any more Team Malaysia team members who are here? Team Malaysia, are you ready to present as these 2 persons? Arvind Asakan, are you Team Malaysia? Your username has no mention of Malaysia.
I think we are still waiting for a couple of teammates who haven't joined yet.
Oh, yes, you can't rename yourself. So who else is from Team Malaysia? Please raise your hand. So Arvind, are you Team Malaysia? Yash, I guess, is Team Malaysia. Team Malaysia, are all your team members here now? Team Malaysia, please talk to me. Yes, and who are we waiting for?
There's still one more.
What will be his or her name?
Kong Wing Lo. I put it in the chat.
Thank you.
I put it in the chat.
Thank you. In the meantime, while we are waiting for the last presenter, maybe the lead judge from the team, from the group who judged Malaysia, maybe you have some feedback for this great team. Eva, do you happen to have some feedback about Team Malaysia?
Sorry, I am already getting the same as all teams in my panel was very interesting and I don't know what feedback. I'm afraid to say something more as a load.
Okay. So Team Malaysia, are you in full roster?
Yeah, I think we're all here.
Okay.
Not yet, right? Arvin is not here yet. Right?
Arvin is here. Okay.
In our session was problems with technical problems. Yeah.
Team Malaysia, who of you would like to get control over these slides you can see on the screen?
Oh, I'm taking over the controls for the slides.
Kwong, right?
Yeah, Kong Wing Lo.
Here you go. Did you receive your rights?
All right, let me test out functions. Yeah, okay.
Yes, so whenever you're ready, please start your presentation. So first in the finals, Team Malaysia.
Kwong Weng Lo, do you already have the control?
Yeah, okay.
Can you just
let's start.
you can go in front and behind, right?
Huh?
Okay, wait. Give me a few seconds. Okay, we can start now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll time my
Wait a second.
Yes, go ahead.
3, 2. Ladies and gentlemen, we're Team Malaysia and we're convinced that we have just the model to revive RAF 2021.
Yeah.
We are on the we are. This
Sorry,
is the.
I'm lagging.
Hello.
Maybe I can switch the slides for you, okay? You say next slide and I will switch a slide.
Okay, can I just start again, please?
You're welcome. I will restart the timer.
Please go to the first slide. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. 3, 2. Ladies and gentlemen, we're Team Malaysia and we're convinced that we have just the model to revive RF 2021. Next slide, please. We are on the verge of a self-inflicted climate catastrophe. This is an emergency. When should we act? We believe that the time to act is now and to go big on sustainability. What? We adopted a three-pronged approach to determine the vehicle type with the greatest potential while playing to our strengths. Why? By carrying out a SWOT analysis, we examine our internal and external capabilities to determine relevant market opportunities. How? We developed a comprehensive sales strategy with different approaches in the short, medium, and long term to build a sustainable business model. Next slide, please. What is the best type of vehicle for RAF 2021 to produce? Before we answered that question, we asked ourselves which vehicle sector offers the most prospects for growth. As a state-owned enterprise, we saw it fit to align our interests with that of the Latvian government, which has one of the most comprehensive EV policies in the EU. Within the EV sector, we analyzed the market outlook for three types of vehicles: conventional EV cars, EV vans, and low-cost EV cars. We define low-cost EVs as those which cost less than 25,000 euros. As you can see from our analysis, though the low-cost EV sector has a smaller market size, it offers the greatest prospect for rapid expansion. In addition, we look at the elasticities of each vehicle type and concluded that the highest one works best for our model. Next slide, please. Why are we going into this sector? We carried out a SWOT analysis to determine relevant market opportunities. Strength: being backed by the government would give consumers the confidence to buy our products in addition to our sustainable model. Weakness: past history weighs on consumer confidence. To overcome this, we aim to position the RAF of 2021 as fundamentally different to the one which died in 1998. We are also currently reliant on government subsidies, though we aim to break even in 5 to 6 years. Our greatest opportunity is the EU EV industrial policy, which by 2030 would make EVs more cost-effective than conventional cars. In addition, we hope to explore additional streams of revenue in the EV sector. Lastly, access to the EU's high-growth market offers us enormous potential. We see two main threats in the short term: competition from other low-cost EV manufacturers in Europe, which is why we're adopting a penetrative pricing strategy. The development of alternative modes of public transportation also poses a threat to our model, which we aim to mitigate by integrating our services with public transportation. Next slide, please.
Now, we are delving into how we plan to market our product. We are implementing a three-stage approach for market positioning, which can be divided into the short term, medium term, and long term. The initial target demographic will cater to domestic consumption, where we aim to consolidate our market share and grow our reputation as a brand. At this point, we will be selling a vehicle at marginal cost pricing to penetrate domestic markets and establish a market presence in the industry, thus reducing our disadvantage from being a new player. In the medium term, we expand our sites to the EU markets, and with a competitive edge from pricing, we establish dominance in the low-cost electric car industry, and then proceed to raise our prices to profitable levels while maintaining a market share. In the long term, we launch our product to the world stage and leverage our increased scale in the high-growth industry to become a market leader. Next slide. So, using Chinese low-cost EV industry benchmarks, and assuming that research and development, facility construction, land cost, etc. is fully subsidized by the government, we are able to price our initial product at a price of 14,000 euros. Initially, the sum of our costs further increases as we use marginal cost pricing strategies. But after 3 years, we expect that due to specialization, our marginal costs will have decreased, thus allowing us to continue using the penetration pricing strategy in EU markets. Once we have achieved good market positioning, we will begin to increase our selling prices to recoup costs and enter into profit. And it is projected that with this, we will be able to achieve our break-even in roughly 5 to 6 years. From here on out, we expect to have a monopoly in the low-cost electric car industry for a few more years, where we enjoy supernormal profits before the market then becomes highly competitive and we have to look for other sources of profits. Next slide, please. So, going into more detail on the how, our sales strategy. As our go-to-market strategy, we will form a collaboration with an experienced low-cost EV producer from China to develop our first product, as they have a competitive edge in low-cost EV manufacturing over even the US. Our labor costs are relatively low as well, so this will translate to more competitive prices. And in the short term, our sales strategy is to aim to replace domestic internal combustion taxis with electric versions through B2C sales channels or governmental sales, as well as maximize B2B sales by signing contracts with car rental companies, which is projected to contribute a sales volume of roughly 500 units a year, translating to 7 million in yearly product sales revenue. Next slide.
In the medium term, we plan to expand to the EU while consolidating our position in the local market. The projections are 5,000 units at a price of 13,000 and expected revenue is 65 million. In the long term, we plan to expand internationally. We plan to do this by signing agreements with local governments and corporations. Conversely, we have alternative sources of revenue such as the cloud kitchen model. Furthermore, our loan business would still be running and we'll profit from that. This way, in the long term, our firm would have multiple revenue streams. Next slide, please.
Now let's look into the long term. So our market will become more saturated as entrants enter the market, as newer competitors enter, reducing our profit margins. So to maintain our market share, we should be changing our business model. Hence, let me present to you all the battery swapping subscription scheme. Wherein, contrary to customers recharging batteries in charging stations, we provide a monthly subscription of new fully charged batteries to customers, doing the recharging ourselves for a few reasons. First of all, according to CGTN, customers don't need to pay a lump sum of 7,500 euros. They just have to pay 200 euros per month for a fully charged battery every month. Without this, and secondly, without this system, it will usually take 5 to 6 hours to charge a battery from zero. We will be able to save all this time by giving our consumers fully charged batteries. Thirdly, we also have the opportunity to liaise with existing petrol stations to convert to battery swapping stations, utilizing their strategic locations. Moreover, petrol station workers won't have to go unemployed just because EVs are being introduced. And also, customers can recharge their vehicles in familiar locations. And fourthly, we can completely do away with complex networks of charging stations. All we need are inventories for batteries, reducing our costs tremendously. And lastly, the most importantly, we get a source of revenue from this subscription scheme, which we can heavily rely on. Next slide, please. Now, moving on to our sustainability impacts and ESG, we think that this is extremely important because according to the Financial Times, firms with better ESG standards tend to record higher financial performance and beat their own benchmarks. So this leads us to believe that profitability and sustainability can go hand in hand, especially when supported by the government. So first of all, we can contribute to the environment, the first aspect of ESG, through reducing CO2 emissions. As you can see here, according to our CO2 emissions hedonic pricing, we will be saving 400 euros per year for each taxi rented out. We can even convert this into revenue by selling pollution permits. And secondly, we will also be able to contribute to the social aspect of ESG by providing affordable, flexible access to transportation for marginalized communities in Latvia, and also a source of income for taxi drivers. Lastly, the governance aspect. Our low-cost EVs and investments to explore piezoelectric applications in the automobile industry will be able to incite long-lasting culture of competition and innovation that impacts our future decision-making. I'd love to get back to the judges on these piezoelectric applications in the Q&A if you are interested. And also, we have a trajectory of long-term growth in the European market, which I hope will strongly reflect on our potential to make our operations more sustainable through learning from regional competitors. Next slide.
As usual, every project comes with its challenges, and ours is no different. Hence, let me walk you through the 4 challenges that we have identified. The first is the competition with existing cheap EVs companies in Europe. And secondly is when the R&D cost is higher than what we expect. And thirdly is when the government decides to no longer support our project. And finally is the diseconomies of scales, which is due to the rapid expansion of the economy. And we believe that the following 4 ways will be able to resolve these issues. The first is to invest in partnerships with China. And the second is to study all the opportunities involving the private clients. And thirdly is to find new revenue streams like the piezoelectric harvesting skill. And finally is to joint venture with existing EV firms in Europe. Next slide, please.
So we are convinced that our solution is beneficial both economically and environmentally while being sustainable, and that it will be the product that spearhead RAF 2021's way back to the top of the market. So that's all for our presentation, and thank you for listening. We will gladly accept any questions you have.
Thank you very much. So we are done with the presentation by Team Malaysia. So dear judges, you have 10 minutes for your questions.
Okay, then I will maybe start. Thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. What I have to listen second time and I hear more and more things. One question, in your opinion, what else our local government, what laws and regulations government must implement in order to support the development of this company of RAF 2021, in your opinion?
Arvin, would you like to take this question?
Yeah, at the moment, our local government in Latvia also support this industry, but what else must be implemented in laws and regulations to ensure successful development of RAF 2021?
Okay. On one level, I'm inclined to say that there needs to be some form of carbon taxing for conventional cars, cars that use internal combustion machines, in order to like level the playing field. Because we've been very honest with you and said off the bat that EVs are going to cost more. But this is because we do use different sort of technologies. They do cost more, and it is not very realistic to expect us to compete on the same level as conventional cars. So one important aspect of like regulations that we believe must be implemented to make EV successful would be to tax normal cars because of the carbon that they're producing. In our presentation, we estimated that a normal car would produce 400 euros extra in terms of like carbon emissions every single year as compared to an EV. So perhaps normal cars should be taxed more, and instead this 400 euros, which an EV saves, should be subsidized. And well, that would help improve, that would help reduce the inequalities between EVs and conventional cars.
Okay, thank you.
A question from my side. Effectively, the business model, especially at the early stages of the company development, relies heavily on the manufacturer in China. What would be the incentives for such manufacturer to provide cheap inputs in the manufacturing of cars in Latvia? How would you incentivize this partner, and what would be the selling point for them in order to get there on the?
I believe that this will be a massive opportunity for knowledge transfer for us. And I think that we can incentivize China to work with us by also allowing them market insights into our Latvian and European markets for them, as they are trying to expand their EV industry as well. And also, we will.
Yeah,
yes, you go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to add to Horsten's answer. So from China's point of view, there are a lot of companies in China which do compete with Tesla in the general market. One of them, Geely, GM, those sort of companies, they do produce very low cost cars. There are some cars in China for less than 10,000 US dollars. So those are extremely low cost prices, and they have managed to outstrip Tesla, not so much in profits, but in sales. But however, they do face significant hurdles in exporting this model to other countries. For example, Tesla is present on every single continent of the world, whereas these Chinese companies have to be restricted to the market within just China. So we believe that the Chinese companies partnering with us allows them to enter into the EU market. And we'd also like to view this in the context of the EU-China Comprehensive Investment Agreement, which was signed between EU and China in order to facilitate more trade and more investment. And as a business, we would like to facilitate the people-to-people connections to make this happen.
I believe I can go ahead with questions.
Yes, please.
Yes, one more question from my side. What difficulties have you considered, and what difficulties you have considered you might face within vehicle production during this pandemic period, especially considering these relationships with China?
Okay, on one level, one of the reasons we decided not to like go for a bus or, for example, like a other modes of transportation is that those still do have like high transmissibility. COVID, for example, does it's transmittable a lot more in closed doors, in closed areas, and buses and all that have a lot of people on them. Trains have a lot of people on them. We do remember one of the prompts from the case study asking us to consider the impacts of COVID on this. And we designed this proposal bearing in mind that COVID is going to last for a very long time, in which case, which is why we went towards a model of like, say, taxis, for example, because taxis are individual and the risk of transmission on a massive scale is reduced. Is the risk still there? Yes, it is there. But we believe that because of the scale, only maximum 4 other people can be in a taxi at once, that transmission risk is reduced. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Any more questions, dear judges?
Yeah, I would like to ask one question with regards again, with regards to the short-term plan, and you mentioned that in long term you would implement somewhat battery swapping in the cars. Obviously, this would be probably pretty extensive R&D and pretty heavy investments. But in short term, taking into account that local charging station and local charging infrastructure is rather undeveloped, how would you address the issue of electrical car charging on site here locally?
So we thought that we could still start off with the traditional charging stations in Latvia, especially when the charging stations are not really common in Latvia. So we thought that we could test this out and see how it went. But in the long run, we thought that it would be better to slowly transition into using this battery swapping techniques, which is very commonly used in China, especially by their EV manufacturing firm, IEO. They can just use automation to simply automate the entire process of dismantling the bottom part of the car, taking out the old battery and inserting the new battery, and reassembling the bottom part of the car. And this is done in a very short 10 minutes or so, and the passengers remain inside the car. So we feel that this, although yes, it will require a high amount of R&D costs, but with the help of China and with the high possibility of technological transfer, we believe that our approach will be highly feasible. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Yes, during presentation, you mentioned one of the risks also competition, high competition in Europe. Can you mention key competitors?
So like key competitors now, of course, Tesla, one of the big competitors in
So,
Europe. I mean, Bigly, go ahead.
Yeah, adding on to that, for the taxi market as well, there's a brand called Dynamo Taxis, which also are looking to get into the taxi market, but we think that their products are charged more expensive than us because they have not adapted cheaper manufacturing. So we would be more competitive than them in this market.
Okay, thank you.
We have time for maybe one more question, 1 minute.
Just a question from my end. You mentioned that in SWOT analysis that one of the strengths of such project would be that the government is supporting and financing it. Do you see any drawbacks being that the government is actually part of the project and funding it?
In terms of drawbacks, yes, there probably is drawbacks in terms of to what extent can we profit maximize. But we've always took into the context that the government is funding us, and we've as much as possible tried to meet their benefits as well, because they're our stakeholders and we try to meet whatever they want in terms of like cutting emissions and all that. But yes, it does have some drawbacks in terms of like, say, government oversight of our companies. Let's say we were to expand very rapidly in Europe and we're at the position of a monopoly, in which case the government could intervene and ask us to like break up. So yes, those are risks, and those are risks that we have to live with, I suppose, if we had to take money from the government, which is also why we aim to break even within like 5 to 6 years, in which case we can transition from a fully state-owned enterprise as we make more of a market share into a more sort of private company, whereby we are not so much constricted or restricted by the government. I hope that answers.
Thank you. And the time for questions is over. Thank you, Team Malaysia. Thank you, judges. I would like to thank Team Malaysia. You did great. And let's give the floor to the next team. And the next team is Team Latvia. So as I may guess, you're presenting from one location. Am I right?
What was the question?
You have only one camera?
Yes, that's right.
Great. So I will launch your presentation just in a moment. So I guess this is the right presentation. Team Latvia, would you like to have your own? Would you like me to control, or would you like to control the slides?
We would like to have access.
Very well. Please confirm access.
Yes, but how can I switch the slides? Where are the buttons?
Try to click left or right, or scroll.
Oh, yes.
Or you can click left or right.
Oh, so there's keyboard input. Yes, okay, it's fine.
The floor is yours.
Hello, we're Team Latvia. To solve this case study, we'll begin with a market analysis where we will find unfulfilled demand and establish our competitors. Next, we'll discuss our business strategy, where we propose our product and estimate our costs. Then we'll model growth prospects and anticipate opportunities for expansion. Finally, we'll identify challenges, both from business and an ecological standpoint. To decide on the type of product that we'll produce, we examined market trends in the automotive industry. As production will be in Latvia, we focused on trends in the European market, which has had the fastest growth in the electronic vehicle sales. Electric cars are the future of transportation, which becomes clear looking at the number of EVs registered in Europe annually. As you can see, the relative market share in the car industry is rising exponentially. However, this growth in demand has also led to an increase in supply, as most major car companies have begun their own production of EVs. To avoid competing in a saturated market, we looked for niches that had unfulfilled demand. One such niche was LCVs, or light commercial vehicles, which include vans and microbuses.
This is because the market share of electric LCVs in Europe is expected to grow quickly, largely due to regulation in Europe that will force producers to limit SO2 emissions by 15% by 2025 and by 31% by 2030. As such, electric LCVs are expected to reach nearly 10% of total LCVs sold in 2025 and 30% by 2030. Clearly, demand is very high. However, this niche has been underserved by EV companies. Thus, to capitalize on this demand and continue the legacy of RAF, we chose to produce electric vans.
Here are our 4 current biggest competitors and their respective market share and car model. As you can see, the price ranges from 38 to 54,000 and maximum drivable distance in average conditions range from 160 to 240 kilometers. Current market leaders' models are designed to only drive relatively short distances, mostly in city environments, since if an electric car is taken out on a highway, the maximum drivable distance is even lower.
The RAF Electric will come in 2 variants: the standard, which is expected to have a range of 200 kilometers and a battery capacity of 70 kilowatt hours, and the long-range variant, which will have 350 kilometers of range and a battery space of 127 kilowatt hours. To calculate the necessary battery capacity, we derived a non-linear relationship between battery capacity and range. We use the most efficient vehicle speed for EVs, the average drag coefficient for electric LCVs, the vehicle weight and frontal area of a Nissan NVE 20. Finally, we optimize that range relative to battery capacity, taking into account the weight of additional batteries. We will offer competitive load volume as well as a passenger variant in addition to the cargo variant.
First of all, by taking into account our intended production capacity, we conducted market research about possible automotive assembly factories, and then, considering different costs in Latvia and initial research and development costs, we came to the price of 356 million euros. For calculating other possible fixed costs, we conducted automobile manufacturing average industry cost analysis and incorporated our specific data to come to these annual figures. 30 million euros for advertising, 61 million euros for corporate overhead, 244 million euros for distribution, and 30 million euros for worker benefits, as well as 61 million euros for amortization, and also 61 million euros for research and development. In total, our annual costs will be 488 million euros. The total fixed costs are so high because of high barriers of entry and economies of scale needed to maintain competitive costs of production.
For variable costs for the manufacturing cost of the RAF electric, we modeled the price of the chassis and body of the van after data for the Volkswagen Transporter, which is a very popular internal combustion van. The price of components specific to EVs, namely the transmission and powertrain, was modeled using industry data for electric LCVs. As Robert mentioned, we calculated the battery capacity, which will cost $12,145 for the standard model and $22,035 for the long-range model because of its larger battery. Finally, we calculated assembly costs from data by Volkswagen and adjusted it for labor prices in Latvia. In total, RAF electric will cost $30,892 to manufacture for the standard variant and $40,782 for the long-range variant.
In our range of products, we are planning to offer 4 van configurations: cheaper and lower range standard version, more expensive but significantly longer lasting long version, as well as the commercial version with no windows and the passenger version with many seats, windows, and convenience features. RAF electric will be the perfect choice for public sector as well as private and commercial sector. Taking into account our production location, which is in Latvia, and the abatement policy trends in the European Union, we will accordingly focus on the European automotive market.
Maximize profits and establish our market share, we developed a competition-oriented pricing strategy. For our models, we assume all average variable costs except the battery to remain constant. For the batteries, we developed a forecast for the 2 major effects brought by innovation. First, the battery energy density. Combining the effect of innovation and physical limit to energy density, we saw that we have all but reached the practical limit of 300 watt-hours per kilogram. But there is room for improvement in the cost per kilowatt-hour. By current trends and market leaders' expectations, we predict battery costs to fall, breaking the 42 euro mark by 2035 without significant change after. We also expect a shift in the demand for to our long-range model as both the cost and weight differences between the 2 models narrows. Thus, our future margin is dependent on 2 factors: improvements in technology and how we decide to act on these improvements. Holding capacity constant, we see growth in the market despite fixed price. This would result in reduced profits, however, as there is no reason to expect less competition and therefore higher viable margins as in the combustion vehicle market. Not changing the battery cost, we see unnecessarily large improvements in range, making the vehicle too heavy. However, keeping the weight of the battery the same, we see an increase in both the profit margin and range without the need to redesign the chassis to accommodate the change in battery mass. Having decided on this strategy, we start production with a net markup of 0 on both models, and by these numbers, our markup will rise in parallel with our market share to approach approximately 20% by 2037 and remain constant thereafter.
As we estimate factory construction and R&D to take 4 years, we expect to begin production and sales in 2025. We predict our first market share to be 1%, or first year market share at 1%, with 1,679 units sold. As we lower our pricing and gain loyal customers, we expect our market share to rise to 5% in 2029. Our sold output will then increase as the electric LCV market grows, with an optimistic estimate of 97,000 units sold in 2040. So we begin with a profit margin of 0% in 2024. Then we use decreases in battery costs to raise our profits for the first few years of production. And we expect our profit margin to rise to 10% in 2029. Afterwards, it will remain constant, and we will use decreases in cost of production to lower prices for consumers. By 2040, we estimate net total profits to be at $3.699 billion for 15 years of operations. Our profits will be partially reinvested back into the business to construct additional factories, which will allow us to quadruple our output by 2040. The business will become self-sustainable after 5 years. Thus, it will no longer require financial assistance from the government, and any leftover profit can be used to increase the government's budget and finance social programs.
When it comes to risks associated with our plan, a change in consumer preferences could lower demand for our product. However, this has no real chance of happening because the market for LCVs has been well established and shows no sign of change. Our competitiveness is more likely to be affected by new entrants in the market or rising production costs due to a battery shortage, for example. In both of these cases, we would have to lower our expected profit margin. If the operations of our suppliers or our own factory would turn out to be unethical or environmentally unsustainable, as a government enterprise, we would have to switch to a sustainable means of production, hurting our profits and possibly competitiveness in the market as well. A massive problem would be an inability to recycle used batteries. However, this is unlikely to happen due to the fact that after batteries can no longer be used for cars, they will be repurposed and used for around 20 years total. But already, Volkswagen has announced a recycling plant that supposedly will be able to recycle 97% of a battery. So recycling should pose no issue.
Thank you. Actually, your time is done.
Yes, okay, we're about finished.
Yes, we will welcome your questions.
Okay, dear jury, your questions.
I have one question. I saw that you have considered the 2 factories. Am I right?
Yes.
Have you considered the specific locations about where these factories will be located to optimize costs, and maybe that might be beneficial for the company?
Well, one way of continuing traditions and making it more symbolic, we could invest and build factory in the old RAF fabric place, so that it's a better way for marketing, and actual place is actually also pretty close to Riga and a good place to hire labor.
I have a couple of questions. The first one is, you stated in one of the tables in the presentation that you would spend more than 30 million USD in advertising. Can you elaborate what effect, or who do you consider the end customer for such product? Is it the public entities or these private enterprises? Who do you consider the main target audience for this kind of product?
I suppose advertising would be mostly for consumer demand, so regular families. I'm not sure we should advertise to governments. That would be contractual.
Private consumers, as well as firms who will need this product to carry small and medium-sized payloads.
However, there is the aspect that existing vehicles, like emergency vehicles, police vehicles, will be electrified. So there could be a market. For instance, historic data show that around 1/3 of its units went to government emergency services. So there is quite a bit of demand in the sector.
Thanks. Another question which I wish to ask is actually about the long-term outlook on and the long-term profitability assumption of the business plan. If I understood it correctly, that this 10% margin starting from in medium to long term, I don't remember the exact years, but effectively the main argument for this profitability to be actually present is the dropping costs of battery production. At least in my mind, it would mean that battery production costs would drop to any electrical vehicle producer, how would you ensure the competitive advantage over the competitors in the market providing similar or similar electric vehicle products?
Yes, we don't expect other manufacturers to largely differ in this strategy, because doing otherwise, for example, increasing the battery size due to the lower costs would require just physically more volume, and it would give unpractical like amounts of range. And so we believe that as we have established our market share, we shouldn't face any issues in that regard.
Thanks.
Then a few questions from my side. Thank you for presentation. Can I ask you more detail to describe sales strategy? And for first period, when it was shown in presentation that in 2025 it will be 1% of the market, and 2029 it will be 5%. What will be sales strategy to reach these figures?
Starting from 2025, we'll use the price decreases in batteries to not increase our profits, but actually lower the cost of our products. Thus, we assume that we will attract a higher percentage of customers, and also we'll just establish consumer loyalty and our brand name, and that would probably help increase our own market share as well.
Yes, and also in the beginning, we would perhaps focus on these government contracts, so utility vehicles and emergency services.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and the goal was Europe automotive market. Which companies you see as key competitors? And if you see.
Currently, we are seeing competitors as Nissan, Ford, Fiat. Also, the new companies from China is trying to break in this market, such as Maxus, which already starting from this year has grabbed a 4.5% market share. We will probably face similar competition going forwards.
Okay, thank you. Or I can ask more questions if we have time. If colleagues are not asking about the advertising expenses, there was millions, if I remember correctly, it was 36 millions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. What goes in these figures?
Well, in reaching this figure, we use the standard cost distribution for electric vehicle companies, which is published online. And then we just scaled it to the amount of units we expect to sell. And in this figure, we expect, usually we would likely make use of social media advertising, as EV electric vehicles would probably cater to a younger audience. And
as well as probably all other ways of advertising, then we will see maybe make some exhibition for firms to see how this vehicle can help them in their production.
But there is also the idea of perhaps as a 70th anniversary to produce a sort of retro version of the RAF van, so to sort of remember the design.
Thank you.
Do we have more questions, dear judges? If no, we can stop it at it. Thank you. Thank you, Team Latvia. We are very thankful for you, and we'll be welcoming Team Canada. You will be transferred just in a moment. Hello, Team Canada. Are all of you here?
Let me check. Eric, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, I think we're good.
Would you like me to control slides or would you like to do it yourself?
Would it be possible for me to get slide controls?
This is Andrew talking, right?
Yes, it is.
So you should have the control now. Please check. You can also use the left and right arrows.
Okay, lovely. I'm all good.
So when you're ready, go ahead.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are Team Canada, and we will be presenting a comprehensive strategy for giving RAF 2021 a new beginning.
To begin, here's a high-level overview of our recommendation. Some key market opportunities are the hard regulatory push in the EU towards electric vehicles and unpenetrated markets like the electric van market. Secondly, as a state-sponsored company, we also recognize that we have a dual mandate to earn profit as well as provide for the social welfare of Latvians and Europeans. Now, our final recommendation is to produce the RAF Hybrid, a plug-in hybrid electric van for the European market. We estimate that by 2031, we will sell nearly 700,000 units and reduce CO2 emissions by over 1.3 million metric tons, with our project having a net present value of 148 million.
So, how does this structure our approach? We first identified one of the main problems in today's market, which is that emissions produced by gas-powered cars are a negative externality. This externality makes social marginal costs exceed private marginal costs by more than $9,000 per car, resulting in overproduction and excessive environmental damage. To reduce the social cost created by market failure, RAF 2021 should ease the transition to EVs for competitive and accessible substitute.
We identified two main decisions, the car type and the fuel type. And for each of them, we evaluated several alternatives by analyzing the environment, examining key challenges, and researching empirical evidence. Our ultimate criteria was how well each alternative met our objectives of social welfare and profitability. So we evaluated factors like potential demand, competitive advantages, feasibility, environmental impact, market conditions, and more. Now, let's dive into our analysis. As several powerful forces coalesce, the market for electric vehicles is surging. Chief among these are rising concern for their environment and strong policy support in the EU for electric vehicles. For instance, between 2021 and 2025, EU van fleets are required to decrease their emissions by at least 15%. And several countries like the Netherlands will see designated emission-free driving areas. Our environmental analysis suggests that electric vehicles are not only a good environmental decision, but also a good business decision, as Bloomberg predicts that by 2040, 80% of car sales in Europe will be electric vehicles.
So we considered the four most popular types of electric vehicles in the EU, which are battery electric vehicles, plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, or PHEVs for short, gasoline hybrid vehicles, and hydrogen fuel vehicles. Although battery electric vans have the lowest emissions at 1,561 pounds CO2 per year, the problem is they rely solely on electric charging stations. So the underdeveloped charging infrastructure in emerging markets like Latvia results in low market potential. In fact, 63% of Latvians said they would not choose battery electric vehicles for this reason. By contrast, PHEVs do not face this problem because they can use both diesel fuels and electricity while also having the second lowest emissions. This is supported by PHEVs having the highest growth rate in sales across the EU at 175% per year. As you can see on this map, there are only 74 electric vehicle charging stations across all of Latvia, making the use of battery electric vehicles impractical. Thus, we chose the alternative of PHEVs to maximize social welfare.
Our next major decision was evaluating car types. And we saw that cars, trucks, and motorcycles face very tough competition in a saturated market. Already, 18.5% of car sales in Europe and over 40% of motorcycle sales in Europe are already electric, compared to only 1% of van sales. Between 2020 and 2030, as you can see on the graph, adoption of electric LCVs or vans will increase more than any other car type to reach 30% of sales. And we also evaluated buses, but found that large incumbents have a very strong advantage because the market is pretty oligopolistic and most sales are done through large-scale multi-year contracts. For instance, in Latvia, an existing contract with Skoda Electric and Latvia's largest transit agency would hinder them from purchasing more electric buses from us.
As for pricing, we balanced a reasonable break-even point and a remaining competitive with other diesel and electric vans available. We will also use a second-degree price discrimination strategy with price discounts for large quantities of vans purchased, as shown in the table below. In accordance with the law of diminishing marginal utility, price reductions for higher quantities will actually incentivize customers to purchase more than planned, which allows us to increase sales volume and take advantage of economies of scale as high fixed costs are spread across a larger number of units.
To strategically obtain market share, we've identified a three-phase strategy to slowly expand our target market to mass production levels. First, as a state-sponsored company, we use the Latvian public sector as a beachhead industry to begin producing our vehicles. For example, the Latvian Post, EMS Latvia, and State Fire and Rescue Service of Latvia could all become premier clients. We then expand to the Latvian private sector, which are more inclined to purchase from a Latvian company and could receive additional tax credits and subsidies from the local government. Finally, we then direct our sales strategy to focus on the wider European market. In justifying our solution, we not only analyzed it from a theoretical and empirical standpoint, but we also made projections to understand the economic profitability in the future. In developing our framework for financial analysis, we've broken down the profitability of the company into key tangible cost and revenue drivers. On the revenue side, we forecasted our price and quantity levels based on existing market data and a bull/bear scenario analysis for capturing market share. For expenses, we forecasted both capital expenditures and our production costs based on industry research reports and market comparables. After creating the discounted cash flow model that accounts for the time value of money and opportunity cost of our capital, here are some key projections. We'd make 280 million in average annual profit. And after discounting this for the time value of money and subtracting capital expenditures, this project would generate 148 million in net present value. Finally, we'd reach production capacity of our existing plant in 2029, at which point we would consider an expansion to meet market demand for our hybrid electric vehicles. Based on our bull case, bear case, and base case that reaches 35% market share, as well as a derived growth rate for the electric van industry, we'll reach profitability between 2028 and 2029. Further, we determined the production capacity of our plant and included this limit in our calculations as well. Thus, we can determine that we'll recoup our initial capital expenditures of plant and R&D in the late 2020s.
Implementation. So how will we turn this vision into a reality? Well, we face three main risks when it comes to the implementation of this plan. The first and greatest risk is, of course, competition, especially with established car manufacturers. We will have to rely on our first mover advantage, our marketing strategy, and we'll take advantage of the local market to obtain a larger market share. There's also the small chance that electric vehicle market sees a rapid technological advancement or slower growth than expected. So to mitigate this risk, we'll have to monitor the industry and either push back or bring forward our plan to transition to fully electric vehicles. So for example, if the electric vehicles get a technological advancement where the batteries allow cars to go significantly farther, then we can produce the electric van a little bit earlier. Whereas if the charging networks aren't as developed as we had hoped, we can push the electric car back and produce another hybrid model. Now, our key performance indicators are efficiency, quality, satisfaction, and financials. Our plan is to split the timeline into three phases. In the first, we do research, development, and marketing on the RAF hybrid. By 2024, we expect to start selling the van, leading into phase two. In phase two, we begin to mass produce the car and also begin development and selling an updated model. In 2029, we estimate that our sales will outgrow our production, so we will need to extend our factory, which we will do in 2028. We'll also begin the development of the fully electric van so that in phase 3, in 2032, we will only sell fully electric vehicles and ramp up production as needed. So overall, our plan is a win for society, win for the firm, and for economic profitability. We create thousands of jobs for Latvians, we help rebirth the heritage of RAF 2021, and we have a net present value of 148 million. We're on a mission to give RAF a new beginning, and we hope you join us. Thank you. We'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Team Canada, for your great presentation. You were very well on time. Dear judges, you have 10 minutes for your questions.
Okay, then I will start this session. Thank you for interesting presentation. First question to your group will be the following. What are key threats for local government to invest in such a project?
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
What are key risks for local government to launch and invest in this project, RAF 2021?
Right, for sure. So with launching any company, we do believe that there are a lot of certain risks that have to be taken into account, especially when we're creating our financial projections. However, when we created our financial projections, one of the key metrics that we used to ensure that our metrics ensure that the company was profitable, even after accounting for the fact of risk, was that we were able to find a discount rate based on the market industry average for automobile manufacturers. So that's one of the key ways in which we mitigated the financial risk, and this was accounted for in our financial projections. However, we also recognize that even if we're not financially profitable, we do create a lot of benefits for the local government as well that really outweigh these risks. Once again, because of all the externalities that we've already discussed, this really does push Latvia forward, not just by having a profitable company, but by pushing the entire country forward as a whole.
And what you mentioned, that outweigh risks, what will be the, but maybe you can mention a few positive aspects, if this project will go as expected for local economy for Latvia. What will be these three things what we will win launching this company?
Sure. So as Eric mentioned in our conclusion slide, we have our project will benefit the society as well as the company and is economically profitable. So some of these social benefits we see would be reduced emissions and externalities. We calculated approximately by 2031, 1.3 million metric tons of CO2 emissions reduced. And secondly, we have thousands of jobs for the local economy, for Latvians to get involved in the production and sales and etc. of this vehicle. And of course, there are ripple effects throughout the whole economy. And thirdly, we see that our profit as a state-sponsored company would go back to the government and would help finance other social programs such as social welfare or safety nets and etc.
Thank you.
Diana had a question, please.
Yes, I have a question. You were mentioning in your presentation that you evaluated the European market as a target market. How about some other markets out there? Did you consider some growth opportunities?
Yeah, of course. So the reason that we focused on the European Union instead of the overall international market as a whole is because number one, we already have very close trading relationships with a lot of the other countries in the European Union. And number two, we don't face exchange rate risk because we do have a common currency, which means that we're less exposed to the financial risk. But furthermore, we are going to consider expanding to the international market, as we mentioned, in 2029, after we have already filled the current production capacities.
Thank you.
Gilles, please. Gilles has a question.
Yes. I have a question with regard to the concept itself. So you're starting off by producing hybrid. Effectively, hybrid technology is well developed as it is now as well. What would be the competitive advantage in case of RAF over the other hybrid technologies out there in the market?
Sure, I can take this question. So as we've talked about, we knew we wanted to create some sort of alternative fuel vehicle because we know that climate change is a very big problem. And this we see as one of our social objectives for this project. But when we evaluate the alternatives, we see battery electric vehicles, we see plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, and we see hybrid electric vehicles. And the reason we chose plug-in hybrids is because they're flexible. We see that underdeveloped charging infrastructures are one of the primary reasons that emerging markets like Latvia, like Greece, like Italy, like the European countries that do not have that aren't as wealthy and rich have these developed charging networks. So the plug-in hybrid, it can run on diesel when there is not a charging station nearby, but it can also run on electricity when there is one. So it's adaptable, and as the charging networks grow, it still remains equally useful. And by contrast, hybrid electric vehicles, which do not need to be plugged in, but simply have an engine that runs on diesel and electricity, and they don't need to be plugged in. These cars have much worse emission rates, and we don't see any other competitive advantage for using that kind of electric technology.
Yeah, as you see in this slideshow that we have presented, the total carbon dioxide emissions for the PHEVs, that's the solution that we do want to implement, are at 4,000 pounds CO2. However, for the regular traditional HEVs, that is at 9,000, which is more than 2 times the emissions for the solution that we have currently chosen. So essentially, our solution is a good balance between first, flexibility, and secondly, reducing the overall total emissions in carbon dioxide.
Just maybe just to rephrase my question, because you guys are explaining what's the benefit of hybrid over electric currently in Latvia or developing markets, but hybrid is here. We see on the streets hybrid cars all over the place. What would be competitive advantage of rough produced hybrid cars over any other competitive produced hybrid cars?
Right.
That was my question.
One of the key reasons why we decide to go with hybrid vans is that we already anticipated this problem in the car market. There are a lot of manufacturers out there that are creating hybrid cars, and you're completely correct in that. That's why we've pivoted to vans, which are a less developed industry. When we took a look at the main electric vans out there, there weren't that many companies that are actually producing these vans. Rather, we found that even major companies like Ford, their first electric van model will come out in 2022. So by going into this more niche market that's really emerging, that the battery technology is only now starting to really sustain, we can ensure that we have first to market advantage in developing our R&D to getting there before everyone else. And because this is such an open market that's still developing, we believe that we can compete with the other competitors who are still looking to get into it as well. And then also, as a state-sponsored company, we do have the support of the local government in tax credits and subsidies. And this would also ensure that we have that first beachhead industry that we could get into, find our niche, and then expand from there as we become a really reputable auto manufacturer.
I just want to add on to that. So in most, we understand that the automobile industry is extremely competitive, and it's hard to find competitive advantages. And we see that there are so many electric cars. And right now, as I've said, 18.5% of car sales are electric. But when we look at electric vans, all of the electric vans combined make up less than 1% of electric van sales. And when we look at that 1%, we see that the top 3 are all, they're all not hybrid. So we think that although a plug-in hybrid by itself is not a competitive advantage, when we look at our specific niche, which is electric vans, and when we look at the 99% of white space that is about to become increasingly electric, we see that there is a missing space there for plug-in hybrids and for a plug-in hybrid electric van. And of course, there are other competitive advantages as well, like Andrew mentioned.
Thank you.
We have time for maybe one more question, please.
Then can I? In one of the slides was mentioned also that there is hard regulatory push toward electrical vehicles. Can you describe in more detail about Latvia and Europe Union?
I guess I can take this question. So the EU as a whole has very ambitious climate goals, perhaps the most ambitious in the whole world. And we see this primarily in their we see this a lot in their policies towards electric vehicles. So firstly, we have the policy that between 2021, so now, and 2025, 15% of vans, like companies that make vans, must ensure that the average emissions their vans produce fall by 15%. And we also have that, so we see that the whole market itself is moving towards going electric. We also see that in several areas, such as 30 to 40 areas in the Netherlands are going emission-free. So what that means is that if you don't have a battery electric vehicle or a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, you can't drive through those areas. And those goals are only going to get more and more ambitious in the future. And in one way that—
Thank you, Andy, but the time is over.
Okay.
I gave you a few extra seconds to finish your sentence, but thank you. I guess you got the point. Well, thank you, dear judges, and thank you, Team Canada. And I would like to invite our next team. So that's Lebanon. You will be promoted just in a moment to this panel. Are all your team members here?
Bashar and Tamer. 1 minute.
Team Lebanon, are you ready?
Yes, all my team is.
Would you
Bashar,
like me to? Would you
Bashar
like me
and
to
Tamer,
click
are you
this? Sorry.
Bashar and Tamer, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Just
okay.
Would you like me to click the slides, or would you like control?
Give me the control, please.
To whom? To Bashar Aidan?
Yusuf. Yes.
Do you have the control?
Not yet. Okay.
Try clicking left and right.
No, I am not controlling.
Try scrolling.
I'm trying.
Maybe I can offer control to somebody else. I will try Joseph again. Joseph, does control works now for you?
I guess he's having some issues with the internet, if not mistaken. You could just pass it to Tamer. I don't know if Tamer is just present.
Yeah, I'll be unable to use the controls because of...
Maybe then I can just click the next slide on your demand. Okay, agreed?
Okay, agreed.
Okay, you have your 10 minutes. Whenever you start, whenever you're ready, please start.
Okay, I'm ready. So, hello everyone, we are Team Lebanon, and today we'll be displaying our new idea for a car, which would be called RAF Piran. Now, before discussing the characteristics of the car that we came up with, we need to understand the problems that are faced that led us to making such a car. So to start, our main problem that we were facing is that for RAF 2021 to decide on what vehicle they want to produce on a market plan and on a financial plan too. So we also recognized some sub-problems like climate change, which in a 2018 special report by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, warned that we only have 12 years left to solve the issue of climate change. Thus, we need to act now. It's like something that we really need to do at the moment. Also, another problem that we would also like to tackle would be that among the used vehicle buyers, the median income of IV buyers in California is $150,000 compared to $90,000 of gasoline buyers, which poses the question of when might lower income drivers benefit from electric vehicles too? Since this is something that we really need to just move forward with. Now, answering to the question would help us quantify the economic equity implications of electric vehicle adoption. After acknowledging these problems, we could just move the slide. Thank you. One more slide. Okay, that's awesome. So after acknowledging these problems, this would help us reach the solution that the car's characteristics, which would be, first, it's an electric car that would be eco-friendly with helping that climate change problem. So we're gonna practically be solving the climate change problem. Second, we're gonna go with an affordable car, which is not just directed at the rich people only, so by which we'll be eliminating classism. Third, we're gonna go for, of course, just making the car being made in Latvia, and also it would be a safe car, and as manufacturers are placed in a way where the parts of the car actually are easily replaced. So let's say a part of the car is broken, we could just easily replace it and not have to replace different parts of the car, which makes the car easily replaceable and makes the cost of maintaining the car for the consumer less. Now, moving on to the challenges and the goals. Firstly, the main challenge that we would like to face is marketing at the beginning, and then just aiming at producing this car in Latvia, which is a developing country. And we do know, luckily, that with the efforts and constant research of the team, we would be able to overcome all these obstacles and surpass these certain issues that we're going to face, hopefully through the enthusiasm of the team. And then moving forward, we want to achieve an eco-friendly car, which would be done through creating a car with 4 wheels driven electrically and that's powered with 2 brushless DC motors. And our second goal is to have a car that is safe and affordable for different business classes so that we can actually make this car sustainable. And with that being said, we aimed at creating a car with a right chosen engine size, avoiding any overpowered characteristics so that it can be affordable by every single class of the society. Now I'm going to move it to my friend Yusuf, who will move forward and dive more in depth in details. Go on, Yusuf.
Okay, thank you, Bashar. So next slide, please. Okay, so the Perlem is powered by dual brushless motor power system linked to an inverter and a motor controller. And this system gets its power from 4 lithium-ion battery packs. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And to achieve the maximum efficiency possible, we developed a new charging station. No, the previous one, sorry. Sorry, mister, the previous one. Okay, and to achieve the maximum efficiency, we developed a new charging station distribution strategy that consists of minimum size power pack, and that what will give us a smaller weight, causing a decrease in the energy consumption. And to charge those packs, we will distribute a large number of charging stations. And here we should note that this concept is developed due to the idea that while manufacturing, we will buy the charging station once, but the batteries will be bought every time we will buy a car. All this in the goal of achieving the best value for your bucks. As we can see in the map, it's the map of the Latvian capital Riga. We will distribute a large number of stations in specified parts of the city. So we've had an idea would be that we can see restaurants, cafes, and businesses are willing to partner up with us, where we would have to change the station for the car near the businesses. And since we would filling up the charging station with the electricity needed, the businesses would have to pay about 25 to 35% of the cost. Also knowing that electric car will take about 10 minutes to get fully charged. So the person that's charging his car can go for the restaurant or the cafe or go for a small shopping in the business. Now I will give the chance to my friend Bashar to explain the financial plan. No, sorry, the next slide, please. Next slide, sorry. Okay, so about the car design, the car will be a sport compact hatchback, and it will be a coupe with 2 front seats and 2 foldable back seats. And the design and the size of it will be inspired by the Mini Cooper and the Hyundai Veloster. I will give now the chance for my colleague Bashar to explain the financial plan. Please, next slide.
Okay, thank you, Yusuf, for passing the floor one more time to me. I just want to move. Yeah, that's the slide. So moving on to the financial plan. The financial plan is actually a really important part of how are we going to deal with the whole company. Now, for the first part, we're going to start by getting the materials, which are a huge part in us forming the best materials to form a perfect quality of the car that we're going to produce. For the second part, we're going to go for the production. In the production process, we're going to start by situating the charging stations so that we can actually check that the people who are getting the car can charge their cars in the best way possible. And then we're going to start by producing the cars. For the third part, we're going to go for the investments. And in the investment part, we're going to start by investing in renewable energy, as we do believe that saving life on Earth, as the third SDG, and partnering with the private sector, as the 17th SDG says, is a huge thing that we really aim at working on. Not to mention the SDG on renewable energy. So we're going to turn the Latvian electricity to 100% eco-friendly and renewable. Now, for the fourth part, we're going to invest much of the revenues that we just make in research so that we can maintain that our product is the best found in the market, and so that we can just compete with other products found. And we want to equip our product with the best technologies found that are also eco-friendly and to increase the renewable energy efficiency in Latvia. And one really important thing to mention here is that the revenues that we're going to be counting on are not the ones that we're going to get from buying the cars, but rather the ones that we're going to get through partnering with restaurants so that we can maintain partnership with the private sector. One more thing is for the last part, which is actually just working for the future goals of our company, where we aim at building eco-friendly buses and trucks, big vehicles. And for this part, we just want to mention that we have two plans, and we're not actually stick to just one plan. In case plan A does not work, we're going to go for plan B, which is a car that works on hydrogen. We do not actually finish all the research on this car due to the limited amount of time, but we really started and it's going really well. Now I'm going to pass the floor to my colleague Tamer, who will take the floor right now to just dive more into details. Go on, Tamer.
Yes, thank you. Next slide, please. Yeah, so now talking about the materials and the price. The car will cost around $15,000 to make, and we will be selling it for about $20,000. For the electronics that will be needed for the car, we'll be getting the charging stations from the company Bosch, and the motors, inverters, and controllers from the company Curtis Electric. As for the lithium packets, we will be getting it from any company that will give us a good price for an 18460 battery cell. We did some calculations by looking at the electric cars and small vehicles. We were able to make the estimate that our car would need about 500 kilograms of mild steel, 100 kilograms of stainless steel, and 20 kilograms of aluminum. And we will be working with the Latvian manufacturer Steelwork, or the LTD, to get the steel and the aluminum. Finally, for the polypropylene, leather, and paint. For the polypropylene, we'll be getting them from the Chinese manufacturers Bona. For the leather, we'll be getting it from the Chinese manufacturer Shenzhen. And for the paint, we'll be trying to find the best deals between the Chinese manufacturers. Next slide, please. Now, as for the competitors, we do have a lot of competitors like Tesla, BMW, Audi, and many more. But what the Piran is able to, with specialists, to combine good-looking, comfortable, and affordable. The car will be a great option for driving in big cities, and it will be able to sustain long trips. Next slide, please. Now, a business cannot merely rely on its product. It needs to have a marketing strategy. That's why we have a marketing strategy that goes as follows. We will have social media accounts where we will build a strong following using YouTube to post trailers about the car, Twitter to post news about the car, Instagram to post pictures and updates, and TikTok. We have seen to get a sustainable growth on TikTok, we need a balance between entertaining content and infomercial content. Now moving on to the TV and billboards. In a goal to building a strong brand recognition, we will be having TV ads and billboard ads to promote our car's characteristics. Thirdly, as for the influencers, we will try to promote our car and collaborate with as many Latvian influencers. And finally, we will be having conferences held that will help us promote the car, its goal, and its characteristics. Next slide, please.
Well, thank you. Actually, your time is over, so I will just leave it at the last slide.
Yeah.
And I will give the floor to the judges.
Yeah.
Well, Liana, please.
Hi, I would like to ask a question regarding your charging station plan. How the European Commission recently announced a huge plan of charging network being established in European Union is correlating to your plans with charging stations?
This is an awesome question. Thank you for asking. I'm going to pass the floor to my friend Yusuf to answer the question.
Okay, so I think that due to RAF is powered by the Latvian government, we will think that we will be searching for ED to be a part of this program. And at the same time getting this electric car work in Latvia.
And one more thing just to add in this case, to add on what Yusuf said, we're going to go for a partnership with the private sector, which is a huge thing, as we do believe that the partnership with the private sector and just building a better and more sustainable world is a really important thing. We did go for a policy statement setting with the Latvian government so that we can just go for the European Parliament and have agreement to accept, to like exclude Latvia for a few years at least, just to create a more sustainable life in Latvia, specifically when it comes to the part of fighting climate or combating climate change in the Latvian government. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you, Carlos. Alina, are you satisfied?
I had a follow-up question. What do you mean by this excluding Latvia? You mean to have your charging stations being there and being participating with private sector? That's the reason for exclusion, or what is the relationship there with sustainability? I didn't get your answer, please.
Yeah, thank you for just re-clarifying. So the part that we were mentioning here is that we just want to build a more sustainable Latvia where we're going to combat climate change through not only just working to combat climate change, but through working and including the private sector, as we do believe that it is the work ethics of the workers in the private sector that contribute to much of the work in combating climate change. And in this part, we aim at combating climate change through building a treaty with the Latvian government that aims at excluding the capital of Latvia for a few just years, let's say, and building these recharging networks so that we can just work together and then find a better solution through research.
To elaborate a bit on what my colleague was saying, what we will be aiming at doing is so we can develop Latvia more and more eco-friendly society, and then we then will be joining the treaty with the EU, where so it can be a much more like sustainable and much more beneficial system and plan.
Excuse me, I will also add one more question. Do you think it is clever from government side to do such investments, because now we invest with European Union money in these charging stations, and at the moment also it is enough when we calculate on the territory of Latvia and number of electric vehicles, it is already enough stations. Do you think these investments, what we can invest in the charging stations, is right way? Maybe because it's quite, I think it is very expensive. It's better to invest maybe in R&D or other or marketing activities.
Yeah, that is a very good question. But what our company will be trying to do is to try to not make it as expensive. How? By trying to partner up with the Bosch, the German manufacturing company, to make better deals and prices for the manufacturing of these stations. And I think it would be a good investment for the government as to just to help go forward the plan of the EU, because I don't think it would go up against it. It would in fact help it by providing more stations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Carlos has a question.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I have a question regarding the sourcing of the materials. So given the magnitude and the high complexity of your operations, how are you planning to tackle any issues within the supply chain? One thing comes into my mind is the shortage in the graphical cards that are used for panels of electrical cars. How would you tackle this issue?
Yes, our team is that is a very good question, and our team is always like ready to firstly analyze all the products needed for the car, and then secondly seeing what products are more scarce than others, to see if there are any other options that we can use in our car to maybe they are easier to get, maybe they are more sustainable and they are present more in the market, and I think that answers the question, to basically find what resources are scarce and to build upon that to find alternative resources.
Okay, so and to add up in the technical side, the main idea of the parent is to make a car that's as minimalist as possible, but with good looking, and we will make we'll try to make an electric the technology of it use as minimal as silicon as possible. Because
Definitely
the graphics card shortage is called because shortage of the silicon because of the Bitcoin and all those stuff. So we'll try to make as minimal as possible.
All right.
We have a question from Anda. We have 4 minutes left.
Yeah. Okay. When building a car, most probably the best purpose is to make it a luxury, and I think it's the main goal actually. And the question regarding the social media aspects, you thought that you are planning to advertise your car at TikTok. Are you sure, 100% sure that is the channel you're using? And the sub question is, haven't you considered about the idea to use direct selling strategies and so?
Yeah, thank you. I think there were 3 aspects to that. Firstly, which is like making the car. Could you repeat the first part?
Why do you think the TikTok is one of the best channels to use for the branding purposes?
What I was stating was merely examples. We weren't specifically talking about the merely only the platforms that we were talking about. We stated some, which would be YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, and all these platforms. And I think any source of promoting would be very essential for this. Also, as in for direct advertising, we will also be doing that, since we're trying to find all forms of advertising. And also to add on to that, since we are in a more digital world, having some platforms and not using the platform that we have given to their max is like not touching untapped potential, since there are a lot of potential on all platforms present, and there can be a lot of gain from doing this. I will now pass to my colleague Bashar so he can elaborate even more.
Okay, so thank you for just giving me the floor one more time. I guess for the part of TikTok, it's really important that we just focus on TikTok being the most used platform by the generation that is growing up at the moment. And we do need to focus on the part that we start convincing and building up the idea and the mindset of the generation that shifting into more sustainable things and not just a luxury. We do consider the cars to be in fact a luxury, but there was a just ongoing debate in the Ivy League colleges in the US on the importance of just shifting to sustainability. And a really, really important thing here to mention is that we just want to make the economy serve the society and not vice versa. This is something that we've been really working on in the team, and this trying to shift this ongoing method of making the economy serve the sustainability of the world and not just serve the luxuries to express others. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, I would just like to add one more sentence just to kind of sum up everything that was said. Also, like the main goal of the car would be to combat classism and to abolish the idea that electric cars have to be they have to look really fancy, they have to be for the more richer and upper class. We want to abolish this idea, since electric cars have so much potential and all people should be able to have them. They should be affordable for all.
We have time for one more question. Eva, please.
Yes, hi. I have one quick question. Considering the fact that your vehicle offered is quite specific in respect of design, what would be your selling point and promotion to? How would you promote this vehicle to mom with 3 children and family with children, for example?
Yeah. So basically what we are trying to promote in this is, as I said before, is to firstly combat classism in every way, is to have this car present for everyone, not a class, which is what most electric cars do. They go for this high price where not a lot of people can grasp on it, the middle class especially. So we are trying to join all classes and be able to make it affordable for all classes. And yes, we are trying to promote this car for as wide as an audience as possible, because we think it would be a affordable, small, and safe car for people to use, especially like maybe a family, or like because of the foldable seats. If you want to go on long trips, there is higher storage that can be used. And I will pass the floor for my colleague Yusuf to see if he has any more points to evaluate on.
Actually, your 10 minutes are over, and we would have to finish this Q&A session. So thank you for your answers and thank you for the questions. And we are ready to invite our next team. So we are waiting now for Team Switzerland. And that will be followed later by Team Brazil and USA. So Team Switzerland, you will be promoted to panel just in a moment.
Thank you so much for the awesome opportunity.
You're welcome. Team Switzerland, are you here? There are 4 of you. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Great. Would you like me to control the presentation, or are you going to do it by yourself?
Oh, you can control them, that's fine.
Sorry?
You can control them, that is fine.
Great. The floor is yours.
Hello, representatives of RAF 2021. Welcome to the presentation by us, your Swiss consultants, on the future of your company. This is our delegation's, next slide, please. This is our delegation's amazing team that has taken on the role to consult RAF 2021. Next slide, please. Let's firstly start off with a very brief history of RAF. RAF has been producing 17,000 vehicles per year, mainly vans and buses, in Latvia until 1998. Next slide, please.
Now, how can we bring that industry knowledge to optimal use? Next slide, please. Let's have a look at our options. We have the means of production and experience necessary to best overcome the entry barriers of the bus market. Regular car sales require brand recognition. Also, market trends do not synergize with the fossil fuel car market. Due to the necessity of governments fulfilling the climate goals, electric buses also have a more inelastic demand than electric cars. This is crucial because consumers are not forced by anything to meet their personal climate goals, but governments need to consider the externalities. This puts a lot of pressure on governments to buy plenty of electric buses to meet their climate goals. Consumers, on the other hand, are less inclined to buy an EV. Electric cars are overall less appealing to governments fighting climate change because of relatively slow industry electrification and worse sustainability. It needs to be mentioned that COVID-19 did have a short-term negative impact on the use of public transport. Though, given current long-term industry trends towards electrification of public transport and to increase demand for, and crucially, subsidy of electric vehicles, the optimal and most synergetic choice for RAF 2021 is to enter the market for electric buses.
Next slide, please. An electric bus. So what, you may ask? What sets us apart is our unique selling point of a modular design. Imagine Lego blocks. Our modular design is kind of like a Lego block structure. Our sandwich modules act like Lego blocks. You can add sandwich modules to each or even take away some. The front and engine modules stay the same, but all the sandwich modules can be swapped out. This allows us to put together everything in one production process. We can make everything from city trolley buses to school buses and even long-range buses. That allows us to utilize economy of scope to our advantage by using different stock keeping units for variable size and delivery demands. Yesterday was Earth Overshoot Day, signifying that we have used up all our resources for this year to meet sustainable resource use. Our design advances sustainable innovation to minimize negative externalities and make the much needed impact. Because our buses can meet different size specifications to accommodate various capacity demands, this saves on wasted resources and unnecessary CO2 emissions, because longer buses can run during rush hours and shorter buses can run during non-rush hours. Also, because the sandwich modules can be easily swapped out, we save on repair costs and unnecessary wastage of natural resources.
Next slide, please. Now, why should you get an electric bus from an economic standpoint? The upfront cost of the average electric bus is $750,000 compared to just $500,000 for a diesel one. Electric buses, however, save $50,000 annually in maintenance and fuel costs. This results in just a 5-year payback period and about $400,000 in savings over the bus's lifetime. Next slide, please.
Now let's take a deep dive into the most promising markets. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Let's start with the domestic EU single market from which we primarily operate. In the EU, 6.1% of buses are electric, with 4,000 electric buses in operation. This rather small number is bound to increase given the EU efforts to mitigate climate change. From 2020 to 2025, there's a projected compound annual growth of 20% for the revenue of this market. This is huge. Next slide, please. EU market concentration is equally promising. Even though there are a multitude of competitors, our modular and highly sustainable design give us the competitive edge. One of our most important competitors, however, is TAM, that also produces its own modular bus, Vero. Next slide, please. When expanding our business in the future, the US market is the next most viable choice. From 2019 to 2020, there was a 24% increase of zero-emission bus sales in the US. Right now, there are 450 electric buses operating in the US, and the figure will likely spike thanks to the recent proposal of the new Green Deal to minimize CO2 emissions, which calls for the electrification of the US bus fleet. Just like in the EU, the compound annual growth rate is projected to be stellar from 2020 until 2025, even reaching 26.76%. Next slide, please. Now, the market concentration for the US market is also equally promising. Competitively, it looks slightly different from the EU, but is equally inferior to our novel and innovative products when we release them to the market. Thank you.
Next slide, please. Now, how can we make money? Let's take a look at how to best bring our products to our consumers. Next slide, please. Now, our sales strategy is built on 3 pillars: government contracts, B2B, and B2C. For government contracts, we offer modular electric bus fleets and upkeep for public transport and school buses to best fit urban or rural needs. To initiate contact, use government contract proposals for fleet replacements. When it comes to pricing, we do bundling and price discrimination for all 3 of our sales pillars. When it comes to B2B, we supply independent repair shops with spare parts and offer training courses and certifications which generate revenue, as well as build a solid outsourced repair network that increases sustainability. And in addition, we also supply buses to tourism companies and airlines. When it comes to advertising, it is mainly done at venues and the distribution is zero channel. This applies to both our B2B and B2C pillars. Pretty much everything I just told you is equal for a B2C business of private transport buses. Next slide, please.
Our price discrimination is based on the type of battery in the modular bus, where we offer economical LFP or long-range NMC batteries at different prices. What makes us special is that we can also price buses with different amounts of sandwich modules at differently, depending on how big of a bus is requested. Amenities come at a premium as well. Next slide, please.
So now, how do we make a difference? How does our sustainability make an impact? Let's talk sustainable development. We are multidimensionally sustainable. Regarding environmental sustainability, the modular flexibility offers buses capacity, optimizes efficiency, and gets rid of unnecessary emissions. We're also socially sustainable. Through innovation, there's job creation out of factory in Latvia and also at the independent repair shops we're working with, which does reduce unemployment and increases social sustainability. These efforts are aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals and are designed to bring us forward. Next slide, please.
Everything we do aims at a circular economy. When something breaks due to wear and tear, only the damaged modules need to be swapped, which allows for greater replaceability and longer life cycles. In addition, we also use recycled aluminum and battery parts.
Next slide, please. So, what is next? What is our future? What is the future of electric mobility? And what do we do next? Next slide, please. After entering the EU and then expanding to the US markets, we aim to make the sustainability impact we need so desperately. With our uniquely long life cycle and sustainable modular buses, we can bring a great electrification of existing bus fleets and win over the market of transportation, especially when it comes to public transport, while also making the sustainability impact that is so needed to advance to the fulfillment of SDGs. In all sustainability dimensions, we are there. We have social sustainability as well as environmental sustainability, and we also have good governance. But what is the possible next step after all the sustainability? Well, long-term, we envision to make our value creation less dependent on resource usage, but also offering autonomous driving software as a service. Now, the great thing about software is that software can be made with minimal software use and still create value. That is the best way to still have value added and a business model that doesn't depend on the usage of highly limited natural resources, and is also, once again, aligned with our key prospect of making the world a more sustainable place. Thank you very much. Next slide, please.
This was the Swiss solution for the business case, the electric modular bus. Thank you for listening, and now we're ready for your questions.
Thank you, Team Switzerland. That was great. Dear judges, the floor is yours for Q&A. Please, Geert.
Hi, yes, a question from my end with regards to sales strategy. Effectively, you stated that you will concentrate on public sector being governments, then B2B, and then B2C. Effectively, that's the whole universe of any kind of client you can cover. Probably you have to choose some kind of focus. What would be the focus of RAF in this case? What would be your primary targets in terms of customers and how you would approach them?
Well, that's a very good question. To answer that, can we quickly go back to the slide of like our 3-pillar strategies, just so that we have like this reference point that we like see what I'm talking about? Would that be possible?
Which page, please?
That is actually a good question. Just the one with like the sales strategy. I'm not quite sure which page that is. Yes, exactly this one. Thank you very much. Now, obviously, government contracts are like the first big focus we have, because the thing is, there are huge diesel fleets out there, and like we have talked about this with like the Green New Deal. Right now, there is legislation passed to electrify these fleets, and this is really where we have a unique niche that we can only fulfill with electric buses. So one of the main reasons we chose electric buses as our main product in the first place. So that is what we first focus on, and again, we create government contract proposals for these fleet replacements as our first approach. Then B2B is more or less building on the existence of the fleets, right? Because once we have our product out there, we need to like sustain it, right? To make it sustainable, repair it, and keep this life cycle going. And so the B2B business emerges once these independent repair shops are willing to repair a product, and we can then supply them with the spare parts, we can train them, and we can certify them. So this is more or less our first strategy. Then B2C, of course, that is also important, but then again, the focus really lies on this government contracts. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Another question which I had is with regards to the profitability of the whole operations. Maybe you can elaborate how exactly you intend to earn from this kind of project? Have you estimated some kind of profit margins, developed a proper business plan? Have you had a chance to maybe establish break-even points? How fast can you earn or return the investment that the government has made?
Yes, for that, I would like to have slide 43 and 44 in the appendix, where we talk about profit margin and approximate price.
What was it? What was it? The title?
43.
What's the title?
Profit margin. Yeah,
this
is it. Exactly. Well, or let's first go to approximate price. It's the next slide. That's the next slide. I'll start with that. All right. So the approximate price, right? When it comes to the profitability and profit margins, we of course first need to look at what we can actually feasibly do. And so we looked at basically what's already out there. You might know Solaris, pretty big player in Europe right now. They charge 600,000 for their Urbino 8.9 electric. Then the average electric bus price that we calculated was $750,000, and the projected price range goes from $500,000 to $1 million. So this is basically what governments are working with, and this is kind of what they need to decide. Now let's go to the slide before that, and we can talk about the profit margin. Now, because the product is modular, we have to really look at costs, right? Because obviously a bigger bus with more sandwich modules is going to cost more. So the battery, that's kind of a fixed cost, right? Every single model has to have a battery 80,000. That's the cost of the battery that's calculated. And when it comes to sandwich modules, the first two that are necessary for the structure of the bus, because they are part of the outer chassis and connect the axes, those cost 50,000 each. Then the additional sandwich module in between, we can have up to 5 so that we can still turn the bus, but minimum 2 are each costing 30,000. And then the engine module, which is the heart of the car, right in front, powers it, that's 450,000. The back module, it is heavy, a lot of aluminum is in there, so it costs 50,000. Then there's an additional module there that allows us to connect with the power grid integration module, and that costs 40,000 and allows us to have a trolley bus. So with that in mind, the maximum cost in production is going to be 840,000 with the marginal labor cost accounted for. Now, the marginal revenue that we charge is at most 890,000. It's the price we charge, but the lowest configuration only costs 850,000. Now, that is a very, very low profit margin and a very, very high price. Why is it still worth it for the government? Well, because we have the main advantage that our buses really last a long time. Once you have replaced your fleet with our buses, you will not have to replace them again. We have seen that with how much you save actually operating our buses, so it's a justified price. And when it comes to stuff like break even, yes, it is a significant investment at first to start the production of these buses. However, it is actually not that difficult to repurpose the existing modes of production, since most of our individual modules are very similar to traditional chassis parts. So there is not that big of an investment. So we think that we will be able to break even after 3 years of operating, depending on the contracts that we get with governments. That is difficult to foresee depending on legislation that is passed, Green New Deal, and so on. I'm sorry for the very exhaustive answer, but this is really important to dive into the details.
Thank you.
Eva, please.
Thank you. Next question. If and how COVID-19 or similar situations, what could be possible in the future, influence public transport markets? And in markets, you mentioned in your presentation, there was different markets all over the world. Please comment existing situation, what is today, and what do you predict?
I'm sorry, you were cut off for a couple of seconds. Could you repeat that?
Sorry, if and how COVID-19 or similar pandemics influence public transport market, and in different markets, what you mentioned in presentation. There was Europe, America. Can you describe
Yes.
what is today and how you see future, whether you did
Yes.
research.
Yes, of course. For that, I would like to get back to the slide. I think it's slide 4, the one with, no, it's slide 5, the one where we have like our different markets that we have analyzed. There it's basically listed. So there is right now, yeah, exactly that one. Thank you. There is right now a big short-term trend towards less public transport usage, obviously because like people have the fear of contracting COVID-19. And so it's the responsible thing, of course, not to use public transport. But we really think that this is a very short term, and it will not affect our long-term business in any way, especially because right now vaccinations are really being rolled out. And so we think that this is not that big of a deal. And when it comes to like long-term public transport, we will need to adapt because like only public transport is able to efficiently transport people so that we can meet our 2050 net zero goals. Martin would like to add something to that.
Also, the sales of electric buses, mostly in the EU, weren't as affected as some predictions have foreseen. For example, car sales in 2018, the amount of registered electric buses was around 2,000, then later on became 6,000 and then 7,000 in 2020. Therefore, there's still an increase in the registrations of e-buses, even due to COVID-19. And this shows a positive side on the market that we're choosing, because even through these hurdles, it still was a viable option for governments to spend their money on. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have time for one more question. I see Carlos has a question.
Okay, I have one more, but after Carlos, if I will manage.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. It is no secret that in Eastern Europe, we are lacking some crucial infrastructure for such adoption of electrical buses. How would you ensure that both the private and the public sector would adopt these technologies if let's say the infrastructure is missing? And at least from the financial calculations, I can see that you're estimating just the costs of goods sold, the cost of the bus itself, but not estimating, let's say, the additional investments in the infrastructure needed.
Thank you for your question. Given our unique modular design, in Eastern Europe, for example, there are many trolley buses, and there is already existing infrastructure in place for example, trolley buses. Technically, it is also very feasible for us to convert our electric buses into trolley buses, which have an expansive network in Eastern Europe. We primarily will focus on where we can get government contracts from. I would like to point to one slide on the appendix that talks about EU directives, and this also touches base on the Eastern European market. Slide 53, please. If you could pull up slide 53, that would be nice. Slide 53. In this table, we see, for example, that still nonetheless, there is potential for our product because, for example, we see in Eastern European countries such as Czechia, they will eventually replace or expected to replace by December 2030, according to the EU directive, 60% of their fleet with buses. Moreover, we need to also include EU funding. And there are EU programs such as the EU Development Fund that actively would support these programs, mainly because the EU Clean Vehicles Directive directly falls underneath this program. So yes, infrastructure would be developed and would be used thanks to EU funding, and it is a target by the EU, the European Parliament, to impose such subsidies. Thank you. I hope that helped.
Thanks. That answered my question.
Actually, we are past our time limit. So unfortunately, I feel that there are some more questions, but we have to move on. So thank you, Team Switzerland. You were also great. And now we are waiting for Team Brazil from Group Zeta. So goodbye, Switzerland, and welcome, Brazil. Team Brazil, are you all here?
Yes, we are here.
Okay, would you like me to control or would you like to get the remote control?
If I could get the remote control, I would. Thank you.
That was whom?
Nicholas.
Nicholas, here you go.
All right, I think we can start now.
Anytime you're ready.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. We're Team Brazil, and we're here to present our plan for REF's rebirth in 2021.
We recommend the production of an electric microcar. This is the most sustainable vehicle and most versatile model of car that can be produced, and the European market loves it. The tendencies of the industry and the current vacuum in automobile production fuel our three-stage sales strategy that will allow us to consolidate ourselves among the key players of the market. The project is also very profitable. It has a net present value of 900 million euros and a break-even in only 8 years.
Every day, be it indirectly or directly, we must answer the question, how can I get from point A to point B? Many of us choose options like SUVs for their luxury feel, but they have a high cost. Others choose buses due to their eco-friendly convenience and interconnected network, but they are a waste of time. But now, instead of picking between positives, I present to you the microcar. In a world of a quickly growing population with less space, less time, and extreme climate change, is it still reliable to live by more is better? We think not. Electric microcars provide at a reduced cost, space, and time the sustainability of a bus and the comfort of an SUV, all while contributing to solving one of the world's biggest challenges, climate change.
Our product implementation can be divided in 3 major stages. In the first one, we will enter the market utilizing its excess demand. We will need to start an immediate production in order to utilize the supply charge opportunity. Our production will utilize high R&D investment. However, with the right strategy, this will not represent a raise on the price. The insurance system complements our product because it will increase fidelity and help REF create a constant revenue through the years. The next step will be the growth stage. By letting consumers choose a car's attributes, REF will be able to discriminate the willingness to pay among consumers and keep its status with a variation of designs. While families are getting smaller, our car will be able to capture this sector, consequently increasing the company market share.
And we will further expand our facilities, establishing our company in developing markets on which significant socio-economical changes are happening, such as increasing the general income. This will allow us to increase our revenue in markets that aren't as saturated as the European one, diversifying our sources of income and helping us to achieve more profit. In addition to this approach, the REF will offer our products with a great variety of add-ons, allowing our customer to personalize the product to meet its needs. Of course, as installation of such features leads to more production costs to us, we will charge the consumer a premium based on how many and which add-ons it chooses. It's important to know that our most advanced Unity will have similar features, if not more, to an average car, but costing 60% less. Besides that, we will offer an insurance for customers, and as we are also the manufacturers, the REF will be able to charge way less than the other services, but still at a positive markup. A service of excellent quality is intended to both create a chain of recurrent cash flow and promote customer loyalty.
We'll now explain our market analysis, ranging from the European automotive market to changes caused by the ongoing COVID pandemic. The European market for cars was set in stone, with many well-established companies such as BMW and Renault that have big market shares and high fidelity. However, the ongoing pandemic destabilized the market and left a wide gap in supply that makes now the perfect time to develop and launch our products, taking advantage of the current excess in demand to gain new customers and give name to our brand.
Our strategy allows us to be quickly established as a key player in the microcars market. At the moment, microcar sales account for only 7% of total car sales in Europe, but this fraction is expected to grow in the next years, reaching 10% by 2032. By capturing 7.3% of this market, we can compete directly with already established players, such as Fiat and Smart. But how will we achieve this?
Well, right now we have a unique opportunity to enter a virtually impenetrable market due to the coronavirus. Poor planning by car manufacturers has led to a supply shortage. With a surge in prices and the elasticity, we can then figure out the excess demand. If we can enter this market now and scoop up those consumers, we will create brand visibility and start selling from day one. This feat does pose specific time-sensitive and logistical challenges, like training workers and accelerating R&D. Additionally, we do have to factor in other challenges later on. Outside the schedule, we must also consider factors like increasing charging infrastructure across Europe and also increasing the car's safety rating.
But how will this charge reflect in profits? Diversification of sales will help REF to maintain stability and constant revenue. At the year of supply shortage, REF will be able to sell more than 100,000 units. After that, a constant growth of car sales will keep the company on the right track. Insurance sales is no less important. Its aspect as a constant flux can contribute to maintaining REF stability in the long run. On the revenue side, car sales will indeed dominate. Although our sales will go down in the second year, in less than 8 years, REF will restore the shortage supply year revenue. So car sales leads revenue. What about the cost side?
Knowing which is the demand that we need to supply, we need to find how labor intensive and how capital intensive our plant should be. For that, we assume that our factory will be as productive as BMW's and Volkswagen's. This is a classical firm's cost minimization problem, given an utility, in this case, our level of production, which is the cheapest combination of inputs that achieves it. However, these costs are small when compared to the raw materials and batteries costs, as they make up to 70% of it. This occurs because we are using cutting-edge technology that has a high aggregate value and, therefore, compose a higher fraction of our expendings. But how will this affect the profitability of our product?
Because of our high fixed costs that include intensive R&D and the establishment of new factories, our net margin is low after the implementation of our project, when our production rates are small. However, it quickly rises to about 15% in the 18th financial year and becomes stable, mostly because of the high market share acquired by that time, diluting our overhead costs. Besides that, our net present value is robust to negative changes in CapEx and WACC, showing that it's not vulnerable to market fluctuations.
Our cost-effective model lets us provide a car at a low price, which in turn sustains our strategy in the long run, not only decreasing possible losses, but also increasing our cash flow when positive. Initially, the high R&D and machinery costs will bring our aggregate cash flow to be negative. However, this is normal in the industry due to the high fixed costs of producing a car. We can offset this negative ratio by adding the sales from excess demand in our first year, which would then lead us to our cash exposure to be around $470 million in the negative. Sustained growth and increasing market share will mean that we'll break even around year 8. Sustained growth after that will lead us to having a 24.3 internal rate of return and a 200 million euro net present value. At the end of this period, we do have to look beyond Europe's barriers and look for an international answer.
The biggest threat to our project is a change in consumer preference. If demand for microcars starts to slow down, our sales will be significantly impacted. The two other major risks are a failure to develop our product in time and the onset of a price war with Smart, who will try to maintain its monopoly in the market. These two risks would hurt our initial revenue and could potentially hinder our growth for the next decade. Speaking of future plans, REF can offset these risks by quickly beginning investments in technology and automation. In 12 years, our plan is to unveil our first fully autonomous car and then follow this with an expansion of our production facilities. The new factory will be built outside of Europe and will reduce our barriers of entry to international markets. Following this roadmap will allow us to reach important numbers by 2050. We forecast a gross revenue of 28 billion euros by that year, generating a free cash flow of 3.8 billion and achieving a net margin of 18%. Thank you for your attention, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Team Brazil. Your timing was very, very good. And I see there's a lot of questions already pending in. I would like to give the word to Sander. We can't hear you. I think we still can't hear you. Maybe I will give the word to Liana now.
Sure. My question is related to the fact that you are entering into a very specific market. So I would like to know, have you evaluated or what is the impact of the existing and future infrastructure and how this is affecting the demand, potential demand of your products?
Okay, I think I can begin answering this one. So the infrastructure for electric cars in general is positive. It is growing, but it is a lot limited to cities. However, our car, since it is small and targeted to small families, will be used mainly inside cities. So the problem with electric charges on roads and highways won't be a problem. So we consider the infrastructure, the existing infrastructure, very adequate for our product. And we believe that this will complement the consumer. This will complement consumer confidence that this is a good choice for them.
Maybe just a follow-up question on your target audience. You were saying that you would be targeting small, medium families. What would be the selling point then for those?
So our price discrimination model lets us match the willingness to pay of multiple consumers. So we do plan that in the future, we will be able to produce a high status car, considering the fact that you can add luxuries. And as the price of this car goes up, we also can attain those high income individuals. Our focus though is to make it accessible to the people who don't have that disposable income. So for example, for a low cost car that would only be 2 doors, we would be able to achieve these small families. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but I think that's satisfactory.
Can we try Mr. Sander Matsina again?
Yes.
Now we can hear you. Yes,
okay, great.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Thanks for the tip. So yeah, my question is about your this ideal client profile, meaning them, as you mentioned, to be the small families. So how does that work with, I mean, a micro car and a small family? Why would they opt for this kind of vehicle? So what's the logic behind it?
Two things lead just small families and starting families is more cost sensitive than the average market, the average consumer. So our low cost will capture that type of sector. Another thing, with the demographical change, families getting smaller, is no longer needed big cars. How is the SUVs? I think it is answer your question.
Yeah, exactly. If I would just like to add to that, the small family indicator is also very nice, and it's a nice public audience to have at this time right now, especially in Europe, where the families are tending to shrink. People are tending to have less kids, and people are tending to spend more time spending in their individual life. So targeting to this audience would be very nice. And as my colleague mentioned, they are cost sensitive. So this would be a better option for people who are just starting out or people who are starting families. So that's why we said that the bulk of our products would be sold to those.
Okay, thank you.
Eva, do you have a question?
Yes, hi. If we talk about these competition risks that you already mentioned, what do you consider as your main competitors, and what would you emphasize as your main advantages, and why we should, as a customer, should choose you?
So I think I'd like to answer your question. Our main competitors would be Mini, that has small cars, and Smart, that already produces micro cars. The main advantage of our car, however, is that it's electric, meaning it's more eco-friendly, and that it's that it's much cheaper than the alternatives, making it much more attractive to low income, to smaller families.
Yes, if I may complement my colleague's answer, we have this with this approach where we're providing insurance along with the sale of the car. So this helps make not only the car cheaper, but insurance for the car cheaper, since we're the manufacturer and we're providing both. So by getting our product and acquiring our insurance, the client is basically saving costs on two ends and making their life easier by not having to deal with two different companies and having everything in the same place.
I would like to reinforce a point for what Sebastian said. We have our car are naturally cheaper, but that doesn't make our car with less features. As we said in the 8th slide, I think, we have our car, we have the same features, if not better than the average car on the market. But at a low cost, yes.
I guess we could give a word to Jirts.
Yes, thank you. My question is about the price of the most basic unit. You're claiming that you can sell the unit for, if I'm not mistaken, less than 6,000 euros. I just can't, or have you done the costing analysis and how would you source the inputs and the required equipment, and how with this price would you be able to produce the micro car itself? Have you done some kind of a market research on the supply side? What costs?
Yeah, I just want to give the input on the price. The actual price, the starting price on year one is actually now 9,000 euros and 9,200 euros, and then we will accordingly adjust for inflation afterwards. But my colleagues can give a better answer regarding the costs.
Actually, yes, I would like to ask, do we still have the PowerPoint presentation available? I can't see it on the Zoom. And Nicholas, I guess since you were controlling it, you could also talk about the cost side.
I don't have the.
Yeah, if we could use the appendix.
Would you like a slide?
Yes, please.
Yes, we have that.
Do you have the number?
The cost breakdown, yes.
Do you have the page number?
The cost breakdown is at slide 15.
15, 15?
15, yes.
No.
Is this one? No, all right. I mistake it's the 8th slide.
Price discrimination.
Price discrimination.
No, I don't think it's right. So it's the slide 13, and I would just like to take the time and answer that question. So, for example, the price would be adjusted, and it was adjusted. There you go. No, previous slide. Previous slide. There we go. So the cost breakdown would be mainly towards batteries, and we use that as a benchmark from Tesla, which is again the best current electric car producer in the world right now. And we use the benchmark from what their most basic model is, and we adjusted it for mileage and for also the weight of our car. So because you are pushing a lower load, so we considered that and added a fixed cost because of the fixed cost of talking to the supplier and fixing that battery. So again, the raw materials, labor, and tax, we included that based on things like weight from raw materials. So we considered the proportionality of weight from other big companies such as BMW and again Tesla. So those numbers are feasible, and we've taken them off of benchmark. So the main thing is that our cost or our price may seem alarming, but that is because of the proportionality and size of our vehicle. And again, this is the smallest vehicle. If you go higher, the range can go up to, if I'm not mistaken, around 19,000 euros. So, or a bit less than that. So it does increase fairly quickly if you add on if you keep adding the premiums.
Thank you. We have time for one more short question. Eva, you have a question?
Sorry, no, I have no question. I just will lower my hand.
Okay, we have 30 seconds left. If there are no questions, I would announce Team Brazil as done on this segment, and thank you for your presentation and your elaborate answers. And we have only one more team left, so we are now looking for Team USA.
Thank you very much for your time. We greatly appreciate it.
So we are now welcoming Team USA. You will be promoted to panel in a moment. And we are ready for our last presentation of this evening. After that, we'll have a very small break for the judges to finish their scoring, and then we will see which team will be the best among these 7, specifically in this final. Hello, Team USA. Are you here in full count?
Yep, I think all of us are here. I will be
Great.
presenting. This is Sam Lehman speaking.
Hello, Sam. These are your slides, and Sam will receive control in a moment. Here you go. Are you all set?
I'll check. Wait.
Try clicking left and right.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. The floor is yours.
Hi, my name is John Michaels, and with me are my colleagues Sani Mahate, Sam Lehman, David Lehman, and Deshaun Reddy, representing Team USA. Today, we'll propose an automobile type for RAF 2021 to compete in the automobile industry, maintain sustainability for future standards, and make use of abandoned factory resources. First to my colleague Sam Lehman for an overview of our discussion.
Thank you. First, we'll investigate the various types of automobiles and the respective market saturation and demand to determine which segment of the market would be most profitable. Then we'll explore energy sources, both conventional and alternative, and weigh various factors, including costs and sustainability, to decide which energy source would best fit the likely uses of our product. This completed, we'll provide a recommendation for what automobile to produce and our analysis of demand and pricing for a chosen option. With that done, we'll be able to identify our main competitors and our risks, which were organized by likelihood and severity. Finally, we'll present our financial model with the break-even point and estimated profit for this project. Now to my colleague Jason Reddy for our automobile type options.
When analyzing the supply and demand of different types of cars in the EU, we determined that the most profitable and feasible types of cars to produce are the compact car and SUV. During our planning phase, we also considered the possibility of manufacturing other types of automobiles, such as semi-trucks and buses, but found that factors such as small factory size, low demand for these vehicles, and higher startup costs made these options infeasible. When considering between a compact car and an SUV, our research found that the compact car was the better option due to a larger target market in the EU and the fact that construction would require less space than an SUV. The SUV market also has many more established competitors, which a startup company would find it very difficult to compete against. When planning, we considered 3 energy options for propulsion. As electricity was the cheapest, most ecologically friendly, and future-proof energy source, we decided to make our car powered by electricity. Additionally, electric car purchase is subject to government subsidies, and electric vehicle infrastructure is rapidly growing, which provides good growth opportunities for RAF 2021. Next, please.
Now, introducing our recommendation, the RAF Vetra. Taking into account all our options for energy type and our options for the specific type of car, we recommend that RAF 2021 pursue a battery-powered option that can travel between 260 and 330 miles on one charge with a base price just under 22,000 euros, the RAF Vetra. Next slide, please. Now, let's examine the current market of compact vehicles, the competitors. Volkswagen, Tesla, and Chevy each have electric models which are sold at 34,000, 39,000, and 34,000 euros, respectively. In addition, the electric car drive ranges vary between 125 miles on full charge for the Volkswagen e-Golf on the low end to 263 miles on full charge for the Tesla Model 3 at the highly efficient end. But the drawbacks of purchasing alternatives are obvious. The 40,000 euro price tag of the most efficient Tesla compact car is far higher than our Vetra. The cheaper alternatives like the Bolt lack the efficiency of the Vetra. And we also considered other commonly purchased compact cars in Europe, the most popular being the Toyota Corolla. The Corolla is slightly less expensive than the Vetra, but is highly inefficient when compared to the fuel-free appeal of the Vetra. Overall, the Vetra boasts advantages in costs, in efficiency, and in sustainability. Next slide, please.
Thank you. We organized our risks on a matrix with increasing cost as we move right along the matrix and increasing probability as we move down. Of these, the risk with the greatest combination of likelihood and cost is the ending of government subsidies. A large portion of the value proposition of electric cars is that with subsidies, they're in many cases cheaper than diesel alternatives. So government policy changes could be detrimental to our bottom line. To prevent this, RAF should invest in lobbying governments and affecting public opinion. Other risks, such as battery price increases or natural disasters, can be hedged against through the purchase of financial assets or insurance. But unfortunately, some risks, such as possible hydrogen breakthroughs, are unavoidable, but their potential impact must still be considered. Now back to my colleague, John Michaels, for a pricing strategy.
As stated earlier, the base price RAF 2021 would charge for the Vetra would be just under 22,000 euros. Now, we came to this estimate of price through cost plus pricing. We used the industry standard markup of 25% to value the Vetra after determining its cost. Through our pricing mechanism, we charge different prices that average to a base price rather than one linear price to show accountability for different populations with different incomes. And now this ensures better advertising prospects and growth potential for the Vetra as it services a wide variety of demographics hitting the market. Now, to do this, we use third-degree price discrimination, targeting populations based on their differences in elasticity of demand. For example, higher income individuals could opt for the high-end options, such as premium leather seats and extended range, ramping up the price of the Vetra, while lower income people can opt for the base price or a cheaper, lower range model. In addition, second-degree price discrimination allows ride-sharing companies, rental companies, and taxi companies to purchase in bulk at a lower price. Now, after price discriminating, charging both the high and the low, we achieve our sought average base price and optimize revenues for the Vetra. Now to my colleague, Sani Mahate, to provide an analysis of demand.
Thank you, John. In order to determine demand for the RAF Vetra, we first looked at demand for the entire EV market. Because Latvia faces minimal trade barriers in the EU, we considered the European EV market as a whole. Based on data from the IEA, we were able to derive demand in two scenarios shown in the chart, the stated policy scenario and the sustainable development one. The stated policy scenario runs under the assumption of current energy policies, while the sustainable development one is based on optimistic future sustainability policies. We considered both models, but decided to utilize the stated policy scenario in order to pinpoint expected demand. In this scenario, total EV sales are expected to increase from about 3 million globally in 2020 to about 26 million in 2030, with a massive expected market share of 28% in Europe. Next, please. Our growth rates were calculated for either 1 or 5 year rates. Considering our product is expected to enter the market in 2025, we determined 5-year growth rates from 2020 to 2025 to 2030. From 2030 onwards, we used annual growth rates of 11.44% to calculate projected sales. Demand projections also took into account government subsidies in Europe for EVs, which increased demand for the overall market of EVs. Considering information from other startups, we were also able to calculate RAF Vetra's market penetration rates with a target of 0.1% of the European market during initial entry, with an annual volume of about 3,700 cars during the first year. With increased advertising and brand visibility, we project that our market penetration rates will rise and reach full capacity by 2040. Our cost plus and competition-based pricing provides affordable alternates to consumers by providing cheaper than diesel alternatives for consumers, and so RAF Vetra can also assist in decreasing carbon emissions. Next, please.
Thank you. In order to estimate the production costs for the RAF Vetra, we took into account startup costs, direct production costs, and indirect production costs, starting in 2025. The primary startup cost is the price of upgrading the old RAF factory to be able to produce modern vehicles. To get this estimate, we took the cost of a manufacturing plant for the Toyota Corolla, and then subtracted the typical cost of a building the size of the old RAF factory. The other startup cost is research and development, which we estimated by looking at R&D budgets for companies in similar stages of development, such as Tesla in the late 2000s. We estimated the cost of producing an individual RAF Vetra from an analysis of the future production cost of the Chevrolet Bolt, which is the most similar car model to what we were planning on producing. We then added the cost of hiring approximately 2,000 Latvian workers. Finally, we added indirect costs, such as sustained research and development, in order to stay out of the competition. Next, please. Our long-term financial model is based on the pricing and demand models shown before, and the costs seen on the last slide. Taking all these factors into account, we see that the break-even point of the RAF Venture project is 10 years after we start production in 2025, and that the profit potential of the project is immense.
As has been shown, our proposed automobile, the RAF Vetra, will reach profitability in 10 years and provide employment for over 2,000 workers in the city of Riga, Latvia. And this will be accomplished through the production of an all-electric vehicle, one made for a future of sustainability. But RAF must do their part in creating that future by building charging stations throughout Latvia and all of Europe, and making sure that the electricity their cars run on is created through sustainable means. After the 10-year break-even point, RAF will be experiencing significant economies of scale and will be able to reinvest in future projects, creating more employment for Latvian workers, more profit for the Latvian taxpayers who funded RAF, and new sustainable transportation options for all of Europe decades into the future. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Thank you. Please, dear judges, do you have any questions for Team USA?
Question from my side. A very broad question, but effectively a very important one. What exactly would be the competitive advantage of this kind of compact car? One thing you mentioned is pricing, but maybe you can elaborate some other angles that could possibly consider it as a competitive advantage of this kind of solution.
Yeah, so compared to other competitors in the electric car space specifically, our RAF Vetra is significantly cheaper to buy with subsidies and also significantly cheaper to operate long term. Compared to other transportation options, compared to a train, the RAF Vetra would be more convenient for the individual, and compared to traditional diesel alternatives, it's much cheaper to operate.
Wait, can I add on to what my colleague Sam said? All right, so one of our main competitors in the compact car electric space would be something similar to to use an example, the Volkswagen e-Golf, which is currently on sale. The main difference between our car and their car, even though the Volkswagen has a much higher price, ours is much more efficient in terms of battery utilization, as in it enables the car to have a much longer range. For example, in the e-Golf, when looking at it, the range estimated to be around 125 miles, whereas in ours, with just the standard option, it will be around 260 with potential to go all the way up to 330 with the longer range battery option. And what this does is it allows the car to be much more usable, because one of the problems with current EV infrastructure in Latvia is that their charging network is not completely built out. There's still a lot more room for development. And what this longer range does is it allows you to take much longer trips that you may not be able to take with other EVs. And it allows the cars to be a lot more useful for less price.
And it may seem infeasible to achieve this sort of competitive advantage with these large producers who've been there in the market for so many years. But what we propose for RAF Vetra to do is to invest highly in research and development for the first 4 years, incurring high startup costs, and only hit the market at 2025 when this competitive advantage with the long range is certain. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you.
Are there any more questions, dear judges? We still have some time. Please, Carlos.
Yes. Let's imagine I'm living in Spain and I buy one of your RAF compact models, and I'm satisfied with a car, but after half a year it breaks down. How would you, let's say, treat these repairs and maintenances, considering that the car is manufactured in Latvia, correct? how would you treat these repairs and maintenances all over Europe, considering it's quite, let's say, geographically large continent?
So since the RAF Vetcher will have similar parts to other cars, such as having a battery that's extremely similar to the Tesla Model 3, it will be repairable by auto mechanics all over the world. The parts will not be just for the company, it will be repairable using parts that mechanics have.
To expand on what my colleague said, when we were going through the construction of our cars, a vast majority of the parts are actually are bought from other manufacturers, which ensures that there will always be an availability of parts no matter where you are, just because car mechanics will be able to source those parts and from the manufacturers that built them very easily, as they are much more established, bigger brands with all these networks. So the repairability of the car should not be an issue.
Mm-hmm. But following on, I know for a fact that in Latvia, it's not possible to repair your Tesla and you need to ship it, for example, to Sweden. So in that case, how would you, let's say, how would you help your customers that don't have these let's say, repair shops in their countries to repair their cars?
So the reason Teslas have to be shipped to other countries is that Tesla uses anti-competitive proprietary parts that are purposely only available to the Tesla Model Company. We won't be doing that, and will therefore be providing a benefit to our customers, making it easier for local automobile repairers to repair their cars faster and locally.
All right, thanks.
I see a question from Eva.
Yes, thank you. Question from economic perspective. In case of best case that RAF Vatra will reach all goals set, what economic indicators will be influenced of Latvia? Can you mention a few of them and how?
Yeah, so if the RAF Vatra met the targets we intend to, it would significantly increase employment in Riga specifically, since that's where our factories are based. And if we went beyond those targets, we could expand to factories in other parts of Latvia with the knowledge we gained from retrofitting the existing factory in Riga to provide even more employment throughout the country.
Adding on to what my colleague said, we actually considered two scenarios: the current policy scenario and the sustainable development scenario. So the current policy scenario was based on current climate and energy policies that exist, while the sustainable development one uses projected future optimistic scenarios and policies. Now, we decided to use the current or sustained policy scenario so as not to overestimate demand for our market. But like my colleague Sam said, if demand does increase, we can expand our factory to account for the increase in demand.
Thank you.
We have a few minutes left for some questions.
Question from my side, more on the financial side. You mentioned that in the pricing you're utilizing 25% markup as an industry benchmark. Have you run the sensitivity analysis? What would happen to the business model in case this kind of benchmark is not met, and then you're facing challenges in terms of profitability of the whole sales process and the whole?
Yeah, so we got the 25% benchmark from Tesla, for example, has a 27% markup over their production cost. And we don't believe the markup would significantly hold our sales, because even with the markup, the RAV Vatra would be significantly cheaper than any competitors.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any more questions, dear judges? I have a feeling that you have run out of questions, and that's okay. Thank you, dear contestants, Team USA. Thank you for your presentation and your Q&A. So, and now we are done with listening to all the teams that we had today in the finals, but that's not it. So we still want to know which of these teams is going to be the winner of this final. I would like to point out that we are now trying to determine the best team from these 7 teams. The result on the award ceremony on Sunday will have some other results, because we have we will be using the best score from the finals and the group stage. So this day's winner is not guaranteed to be the total winner on Sunday. So now the judges from EY will leave us for some 5 minutes to have a discussion on who do they see as the best team from all. And I can say that the discussion will be tough. So dear EY judges, you are free to go for your own discussion, and we will welcome you back once you're ready. That would be approximately 5 minutes, I understood. In the meantime, we of course have to fill this time, and I would like to ask the opinion of other judges who are also in this meeting. So there are several judges here in this meeting. I will invite you to the panel, and these judges were part of the groups judging all the teams, and I would like to ask these judges if they might have some comments, some feedback for all the contestants, what they could recommend them, what were the strong sides or the weaknesses of the presentations. So maybe all of you contestants could learn from other mistakes or your own mistakes. So we currently have a few judges in the panel. I can see Judge Judge from Santos Alfonso and Tomasz Kosher, and maybe some others will be joined. Do you have any feedback you would like to give to the contestants based on what you saw on today's presentation? Any of the judges? Okay, I see Judge Santos Alfonso turn on his video. Do you have a comment maybe for any teams?
I don't have any comment, but I liked very much Switzerland's presentation. Just that. I don't have any other comment.
Okay, so maybe other judges have something they noticed in their groups that they would think everybody should learn from, or maybe abstain from doing in future.
Honestly, I don't have anything to say. Honestly, I like
maybe some of the judges noticed some typical mistakes often made by the teams while presenting. Okay, I seem like there are no specific proposals on those parts. So, okay, maybe you will come up with some ideas. And maybe the other contestants who are here in the chat, you can also use the Q&A button. So maybe you have some questions to the judges in regards of maybe some tips or things you would like to ask. And I see that Akhtar Ahmed has joined. Akhtar Ahmed, do you have any feedback for the contestants?
I think that teams will focus more on, that sustainability. They have focused more on commercial viability or commercial feasibility. And at the same time, social desirability is not discussed that much. So that 2 points actually I like to mention, that what will be the desirability of this kind of project, usually financed by government. And another is that sustainability. So that should be focused by top teams, I thought.
That's actually a very good point, especially knowing that we have a special award from SAB Bank for the most sustainable business case. So, Mr. Yuri Khoroshilov, you seem to have an award.
Oh, yeah, actually,
kind of answering your previous question of what I think was missing from most of the presentation. It's looked like most team look at this case as a business case for a company to start and to make profit. And most of the teams ignore the fact that it's actually government-owned company, and the objective may be not to make profit, but the objective basically is to increase social welfare of Latvia, for example. So that aspect of this case was not developed much by many teams. Okay, that was my comment. And now,
yes, that's a very good point, and that's really that was one of the parts of the case that it was mentioned that there's a full government support for this factory. I see our old friend Hamidi has joined. Maybe you have some feedback for any of the teams and how they solved or presented the presentation.
Yeah, I think generally all the students are doing very well. One thing that actually caught my attention is how the students actually basically plan their thought process, right? So what are the first thing to say, second things to say, and what are the supporting arguments for each of the aspects. Another thing is that something that I would actually suggest to avoid is actually when answering the questions by the jury is try to avoid giving your opinion, solely your opinion, but try to also quote some of the facts or figures that you can have to actually support whatever that the answers that you wanted to provide to the juries. So yeah, so that creates that gives a little bit more of credibility in the answers given to the juries. Yeah.
Thank you, Hamidi. You're a little bit disappearing, but I guess that's because you're far away. I see that also maybe Mr. Daniel Fedorovich has something to say, since I see he joined us. And he was also observing some of the groups and their presentations.
Thank you, but I think I observed too little to have some good comments, so I will abstain.
Well, thank you. You have the right. Okay, so the judges are still, I would say, discussing who the winner will be. And I have to say that based on the preliminary discussions, the fight is very tight. We have a very tight scores with slight differences of maybe 5% points up and down. So there are, it will be very hard to say which team will be the best of all the teams. And maybe there I see, do we have some other judges joining? Not yet. I see, by the way, Mr. Kāris Vīkis maybe is back or not gone. Have you any comments as you observed the happening, or are you not here? Okay, not here. So in the meantime, I can take a look at our future plans, and the next step is that later today, or maybe quite soon, we can expect the grades for economics to become available. Can please Daniel confirm my statement?
Yes, that's what actually I was primarily busy with. So the judges are finalizing the economics grades, and I think maybe 30 to 60 minutes from now they will be published in the contestants, where they submitted the solutions, and also we will release the grading schemes together with the correct solutions.
Okay, so I could share with the people here that the team leaders will be able to access the grades of their team students on the same platform that we used for the testing, and you will be able to enter the same test your contestants entered, and you will be able to see their answers and the grades and the comments of the judges of your very own team. And you will receive emails and also messages in our channels on how to do that. And tomorrow we can expect moderation. So there are some judges who are new, some team leaders who are new here. So today, So tomorrow we expect moderation at 13 UTC, and you will also receive a form where you will be able to indicate which questions you would like to discuss with the judges, and there will be a system where you will be able to where you'll be able to meet the judges on the Zoom call. And if there are, and there's also entertainment tomorrow. We have common meal at 10 UTC with some cuisine from all around the world, and still one lecture tomorrow. About income risk inequality, and also some information about the IEO-X. And we will meet also on Sunday for the closing ceremony. And now I can see that the judges are back here. So basically we could almost get ready to finding out which actually will be the best team of the competition. But dear judges, please don't hurry. And I will give the word to the lead judge, to Eva, and maybe you can also have some initial words on, well, how tough was the grading actually.
Yes, thank you, Martin. I will be short because I am pretty sure everybody is waiting and very stressy. Yeah. About grading and discussion among jury, there was not very hot discussions and everything was clear, and we can announce winner team from Canada.
Okay, and now it's official. Congratulations to Team Canada as the winners of today's Business Case Grand Finals.
Martin, we don't hear you.
Yes, so Team Canada, I guess you are glad, and unfortunately we can't hear your ovations right now, but you are the best among these teams for today. So celebrate as long as you want. Of course, we will still have the final results that will be based on calculation of the best grade from the finals and the group stage. So we can expect surprises on Sunday, because this is today's winner, and let's keep it at it. So thank you all the judges. Thank you all the contestants and all the helpers of this event. And with this nice note, I would like to congratulate again Team Canada and close this beautiful event until we meet again tomorrow. Thank you.